Hey everyone, I know this is my first YouTube video, but I want to talk about something serious today. So, I read this video, I saw this video on my friend's MySpace page, right? And I read it and it just amazed me how easily you could lose your faith in Jesus, but how much harder it is to get it back. So, I'm going to read this video to you. Okay. This one should keep us all thinking. This is a true story of something that happened just a few years ago at USC. There was a professor of philosophy there who was a deeply committed atheist. His primary goal for one required class was to spend the entire semester to prove that God couldn't exist. His students were always afraid to argue with him because of his impeccable logic. Sure, some had argued in class at times, but no one had ever really gone against him because of his reputation. At the end of every semester on the last day, he would say to his class of 300 students, "If there is anyone here who still believes in Jesus, stand up." In 20 years, no one had ever stood up. They knew what he was going to do next. He would say, "Because anyone who believes in God is a fool." If God exists, he could stop this piece of chalk from hitting the ground and breaking. Such a simple task to prove that he is God, and yet he can't do it. And every year he would drop the chalk onto the tile floor of the classroom, and it would shatter into 100 pieces. All the students would do nothing but stop and stare. Most of the students thought that God couldn't exist. Certainly, a number of Christians had slipped through, but for 20 years they had been too afraid to stand up. Well, a few years ago, there was a freshman who happened to enroll. He was a Christian, and he had heard the stories about his professor. He was required to take this class for his major, and he was afraid. But for 3 months that semester, he prayed every morning that he would have the courage to stand up no matter what the professor said or what the class thought. Nothing they said could ever shatter his faith, he hoped. Finally, the day came. The professor said, "If there is anyone here who still believes in God, stand up." The professor and the class of 300 students looked at him shocked as he stood up at the back of the classroom. The professor shouted, "You fool! If God exists, he could keep this piece of chalk from breaking when it hit the ground." He proceeded to drop the chalk. But as he did, it slipped out of his fingers, off his shirt cuff, onto the pleat of his pants, down his leg, and off his shoe. As it hit the ground, it simply rolled away, unbroken. The professor's jaw dropped as he stared at the chalk. He looked up at the young man and then ran out of the lecture hall. The young man who had stood proceeded to walk to the front of the room and shared his faith in Jesus for the next half hour. 300 students stayed and listened as he told of God's love for them and of his power through Jesus. Okay. Now all of you out there who just listened to that, you have two choices. 1, pretend you never heard this. Or 2, pass this along to your Christian and non-Christian friends, giving them encouragement we all need every day. When you choose option 2, you have chosen to stand up. Now I'd like to thank you for listening to my video, and I will have more of this and other videos coming up soon. So stay strong in your faith and pray every day and believe in God. Bye.